Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this explosive edition of entertainment news where the world of daytime television just got a whole lot spicier. Imagine the set of Loose Women, that iconic ITV powerhouse where bold women spill the tea on everything from love to politics, buzzing with anticipation as one of Hollywood's most enigmatic stars, Gary Oldman, steps into the fray. Gary, the chameleon-like actor who's captivated audiences with his chilling portrayals in films like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and his Oscar-winning turn in Darkest Hour, was there to promote his latest project, a gritty drama about redemption and the shadows of fame that mirror his own storied career. At 67, with that signature gravelly voice and piercing gaze, Gary exudes an aura of quiet intensity, a man who's navigated the highs of critical acclaim and the lows of personal demons, including battles with addiction that he's openly discussed in interviews. But today, on this unassuming Tuesday afternoon in the heart of London's media district, the studio lights feel hotter than usual, the audience's applause a touch more electric, as if they sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. Denise Welch, the fiery matriarch of Loose Women, a veteran panelist since 2005 with her unfiltered candor and no-holds-barred style, sits poised like a lioness ready to pounce. Known for her roles in EastEnders and Coronation Street, Denise has become synonymous with Loose Women's brand of raw, relatable feminism, often clashing with guests and co-stars alike in debates that leave viewers glued to their screens. She's no stranger to controversy. Her defense of Prince Harry against royal critics or her candid rants about generational laziness have sparked headlines aplenty. As Gary settles into the plush red chair, adjusting his impeccably tailored blazer that hints at his rock-and-roll past with bands like The Damned, the panel comprising Denise, the ever-diplomatic Kay Adams, the bubbly Nadia Sawalha, and the sharp-witted Jane Moria greets him with warm smiles and knowing nods. The topic du jour: the elusive nature of authenticity in an age of scripted personas, a theme Gary's new film explores through a protagonist wrestling with his public mask. "Gary, darling, you've worn so many faces on screen," Denise begins, her Geordie lilt cutting through the chatter like a warm knife through butter. "But tell us, how do you keep it real when the cameras stop rolling?" The audience leans in, expecting tales of method acting and midnight epiphanies, but Gary's response is measured, almost poetic. Authenticity? It's a luxury we actors chase but rarely catch. Life's too messy for that polish. As the Loose Women studio hums with that peculiar energy of mid-morning mayhem, crew members darting like shadows, the audience's murmurs a constant underscore. The conversation between Gary Oldman and Denise Welch begins its inexorable slide from collegial sparring to something far more visceral. We've left them at the precipice, with Denise's challenge hanging in the air like a challenge flag thrown down in a duel of words. Gary, ever the craftsman of nuance, tilts his head slightly, that famous brow furrowing in a way that's half contemplation, half consternation. Fame as a drug? Perhaps, he concedes, his London accent thickening with emotion, but it's the withdrawal that guts you. Oh, the silence after the applause, the mirror that doesn't lie. The panel absorbs this, Kay nodding empathetically, her journalist's instinct sensing a story worth pursuing gently. "That's profound, Gary," she interjects smoothly, "and it ties right into your film's themes of isolation in the spotlight." But Denise, undeterred, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of the hunt, leans in closer, her bangles jingling like warning bells. "Profound? It's pop psychology, love. I've been sober from my own demons longer than you've been a household name, and I say it's choice, not curse." The audience gasps collectively, a ripple of shock traveling through the rows of mostly middle-aged women who've tuned in for empowerment, not evisceration. Gary's eyes, those windows to 1,000 roles, flash with something primarily a mix of hurt and defiance that's more Sid Vicious than Sir Winston. He's no stranger to tough crowds. Recall his infamous 2014 Playboy interview where he ranted about nearly everything under the sun, only to apologize profusely later. But this is different. To live, unedited, with millions potentially watching via catch-up. "Choice?" he echoes, his voice dropping to that ominous timbre from Leon, the Professional. "Tell that to the bottle that owned me for decades, Denise. Sobriety isn't a switch, it's surgery without anesthesia." The words land with precision, slicing through the levity, and for a beat, the studio feels too like. Nadia, sensing the chill, attempts a pivot. "Gary, your co-star in the new film, that young ingenua, did she learn from your wisdom on set?" It's a lifeline tossed into choppy waters, but Gary, now fully engaged in the fray, ignores it, his focus laser-locked on Denise. The tipping point arrives not with a bang, but with a barrage of barbs that escalate the Gary Oldman Denise Welch showdown from tense tango to full-throated tempest, the loose women set transforming into a coliseum where words are the lions and egos the Christians. We've reached that fever pitch where the panel's attempts at mediation feel like whispers in a hurricane. K's soft "let's broaden this" drowned out by Denise's unrelenting barrage, her voice now a crescendo of conviction. "You actors swan in with your scripts and sob stories," she declares, pointing a finger that's half accusatory, half affectionate in that uniquely British way, "but we women of telly bleed authenticity every day and no retakes, no residuals." The audience, that fickle jury, erupts in applause, a wave of solidarity crashing over Gary, who sits ramrod straight, his knuckles whitening around the chair's edge. At this juncture, it's clear the promotion has devolved his new film, a tale of a washed-up thespian reclaiming his narrative, now serves as unwitting metaphor for the unfolding farce. Gary, drawing on depths honed from portraying fractured souls like George Smiley or Harry S. Truman, responds not with anger but with a weary eloquence that silences the room. "Bleed? Denise, I've hemorrhaged years to this craft addiction, divorce, the gnawing doubt that you're a fraud in fishnets." The fishnets nod to his drag turn and prick up your ears elicits a smattering of laughs, a brief oasis in the desert of discord, but Denise pounces on the vulnerability like a tabloid on a scandal. "Fraud? Pot calling the kettle, Gary. Your Churchill was brilliant, but was it you or the makeup hiding the man?" It's a surgical strike, questioning not just his artistry but his essence, and the panel recoils. Nadia's hand flies to her mouth, Jane's eyes widen in that "did she just go there?" stare. The audience's reaction is visceral, a front-row matron clutches her pearls, a younger viewer in the back whoops in delight at the audacity. Gary's face, usually a canvas of controlled emotion, cracks a flush creeping up his neck, his lips pressing into a thin line that recalls every brooding anti-hero he's embodied. In the immediate aftermath of Gary Oldman's dramatic departure from the Loose Women set, the studio descends into a whirlwind of whispered consultations and hurried apologies, the kind of backstage ballet that turns potential PR Armageddon into manageable headlines, yet the echo of his footsteps lingers like a dramatic stage direction in an unfinished play. Picture the panel, still seated amid the detritus of half-eaten biscuits and cooling teacups, exchanging glances that speak volume. K's furrowed brow signaling crisis mode, Nadia's wide-eyed wonder at the chaos, Jane's pragmatic sigh as she checks her phone for incoming flack. Denise Welch, the epicenter of the storm, sits uncharacteristically still, her scarlet blouse now seeming less a power statement and more a flag of surrender, as she processes the whirlwind she unleashed. "Did I push too far?" she murmurs to Kay, who pats her hand reassuringly. "Passion's your superpower, Dina, but maybe dial it back for Knights of the Realm next time." The audience, filing out with a buzz like bees from a disturbed hive, murmurs debates. Gary was cornered. Versus Denise is a legend says what we think. As the credits roll on the segment, a producer dashes on stage with a tablet, scrolling through the torrent. 50,000 views on the clip already. Hashtags fracturing into camps. Team Oldman for his dignified dismount. Team Welch for her embodied spirit. Gary, meanwhile, in the sanctuary of his chauffeur Bentley gliding through London's rain-slicked streets, exhales a breath he didn't know he held, his agent on speakerphone spinning yarns of artistic integrity to plant in the press. It was electric, Gary a raw, real. The film's buzz just tripled, the agent enthuses, but Gary's chuckle is hollow, real? Felt more like mugging with mix. His mind replays the beats of the initial warmth, the creeping barbs, the snap, and he wonders if this vulnerability will fuel his next performance or haunt his interviews. Back at ITV headquarters, executives convene in a glass-walled war room, charts projecting viewer spikes, up 40%. A controversy is catnip, one notes, while another frets over sponsor jitters. As the dust settles on the Gary Oldman Denise Welch Loose Women imbroglio, the incident morphs from momentary meltdown into a cultural touchstone, dissected across airwaves and algorithms, inviting us to probe the fragile fault lines between celebrity candor and conversational combat, where one misplaced prod can propel a guest from the hot seat to the headlines. Days post-departure, Gary retreats to his rhythm of rehearsals and reflections, the London fog a fitting shroud for introspection, while he fields calls from collaborators intrigued by the unfiltered Oldman unveiled on Midday Daily. In interviews with The Times, he frames it philosophically: "Denise didn't kick me off as she ignited a dialogue I didn't know I needed. Fame's facade cracked, and that's the film's heart." His magnanimity wins plaudits, painting him not as victim but victor, the stoic sage who turned slight into insight. Denise, back in the loose women fray with renewed vigor, addresses the elephant in the studio during the candid confessional segment. "Gary's a class act, and my Geordie gob ran away with me, but that's the spice of live TV. The audience swoops, her vulnerability a velvet glove over the iron fist of her persona, and ratings hold steady, proving controversy's currency." Co-stars rally, Kay pens a blog on the art of the tough talk, Nadia shares BTS clips of Gary's entrance charm, Jane debates ethics on a sister show. Socially, the schism heals into harmony. Fan art floods Insta of Gary and Denise as dueling divas in a buddy comedy, petitions just for Oldman vs. Welch, the rematch. Broader ripples touch mental health circles. Gary's sobriety shoutout amplifies helplines, while Denise's rawness reignites chats on women's unapologetic voices. Critics chime in. A Vanity Fair piece stubs at the panel that outacted Parliament, lauding the unscripted theater. Gary, promoting abroad, weaves the tale into anecdotes, disarming hosts with "I survived loose women and now ask about the dragon in Harry Potter." Laughter follows, the sting softened to story. Denise, guesting on the One Show, quips: "Gary taught me, even Churchills have limits," her winking at redemption. Privately, exchanged a bottle of single malt, non-alcoholic for him, her vice, arrives at her daughter his note, to fire exchanges and future toasts. Hers reciprocates with a signed script from Waterloo Road, "For the man who stormed the best exit." The gesture cements respect, turning foes to footnotes in mutual memoir.